Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2 of the FX surprise smash hit The Bear, which was my #1 show of 2021, and I'm super excited to sit here and talk about it with you guys. I'm going to be talking about it in non-spoilery fashion, so those of you who have been around this channel for a while, you know, generally I talk about spoilers and I get pretty in-depth about the episodes, but I didn't want to do that with this one. I kind of wanted to talk about it as a whole in non-spoilery fashions to give you guys who might be interested before you watch it what my thoughts are. And then maybe after you watch, you can come back, maybe leave something in the comments and we can talk about it. But I want to get started. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, you know how I felt about the first season of The Bear. It's my #1 show, like I said in the open, of 2021. So of course I was going to roll out the red carpet for Season 2. I took the day off of work. I binged the entire thing. I didn't actually get through the whole thing like I had planned. It was 2 more episodes than I expected. I thought it was going to be 8. It ended up being 10. And then they were more, I think they were closer to about 40 minutes a piece than 30 like I was expecting. And then episode 6 was over an hour. So I can't sit for that long, getting up, doing things around the house, eating, combined with trying to fit in time for 10 episodes. It did take me all of the day. I got through the first 9 before I had to, actually had to leave the house to do something. And then I finished it last night, episode 10. So that was what I did. And I couldn't be more ready to sit down and talk with you guys about it. So let me get my first big concern out of the way. And when I talk about this concern, I've had this concern with other things before. Whenever you have something that's like a big surprise smash hit, it seems like studios always want to capitalize on that popularity really fast. Strike while the iron's hot. Let's milk this for what it's worth while people are still talking about it, while people are still obsessed. Let's pump out more of it so we can rake in some more money off of its popularity right now. So, and if you listen to what I just said, none of that had anything to do with wanting to tell a compelling story about compelling characters, or like, we made a great thing in Season 1, let's make a great thing in Season 2. It's never that shit. It's always fucking like, let's strike while the iron's hot and see how much more money we can make off of this thing that we didn't think was going to be as big of a deal as it is. So because of that, I was concerned that this season was going to feel like, not half-assed, because I don't think the people who made Season 1 are going to half-ass the second season. But I was just concerned that they had a story that they wanted to tell with Season 1. They told that story, and then it ended up being a huge deal. And FX was like, yo, we need another one. They're like, well, fuck, we didn't have a 2-season plan. We just want to tell this one story. And now they have to make up a new story that maybe not necessarily have been what they wanted to tell, or if they even wanted to tell a story at all. And I was just concerned that it was gonna feel forced, unnecessary, and it was gonna, I think, lessen the historical impact of the first show. I don't say historical impact, make it sound like it's the fucking Emancipation Proclamation, but what I mean, like, I mean, like, if we just had the one season, we would look back at that moment like, yo, remember when The Bear came out completely out of nowhere and it was fucking amazing and everyone loved it? And, you know, it could have been just that. But if a second season comes along and it feels rushed or forced or like they didn't put as much effort into it, then now you look back at like, yeah, there was that thing, The Bear, that one time, and it had that dope first season, but then the second season was mid. And it's like now it just becomes a thing that happened in the past as opposed to like a moment in time where everyone was like obsessed with this thing that came out of nowhere. Well, let me establish for you right away that this was not a let's throw some shit together and capitalize on the popularity type of thing. This was another great season of television. So if you shared that concern with me, let me assure you, you are not going to watch this and go like, yeah, they didn't give a fuck. They're just trying to get more money. No, you get, it feels very much The Bear. The first season, in my opinion, I'm sorry, my nose is super itchy. I don't know why. Had two specific. I swear I don't do coke. The first season had two specific aspects that I think made it the remarkable television season that it was. And I want to kind of break this review up into talking about those two things specifically in like kind of like big portions. There's the first thing's gonna have little sections, but like, yeah, I kind of want to break it up because I just feel like that's the best way to kind of like give my non-spoilery thoughts on the show and still give you a video that's worth fucking watching, right? But one of those two things I think is great, again, this season. And then the other thing I think is actually all but absent from this season, and I think that this season is actually lesser than the first one because of it. And again, like I said, I'm not saying this season's bad or what. I'm just saying if you put out something as perfect as the first season of The Bear, when you put out a second season, I'm bound to go, how does this compare to the first one? And no matter how good you feel about this season, and I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about you, the viewer, I think we can all collectively agree it's not on par with the first one. Like, it's still fire, but it's not the first one. And the second thing that I want to talk about is the reason. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Additionally, this season, I think, had some flaws. Not huge, big, blaring, red alarm flaws, things like, oh, this is terrible. But just like multiple little things that I could nitpick at and go like, I didn't really like that thing. And season one had none of that. Like I said, season one was perfection. Like, it very rarely do you get something that's perfect from start to finish. Season one was that. This one had its issues. And when I say it had its issues, again, I'm not saying that this was bad or anything like that. Every single show ever has had its issues, except like the first season of this and probably like 3 other things. So yes, it's had issues, but not a big deal. And we'll get to that in a little bit though. Like I said, I want to start by talking about things that worked, and I want to start by talking about the story. And then, like I said, I want to get into those 2 major aspects of season 1 and their role in this season. And like I said, one is executed well, the other is all but absent. Then I'm going to wrap up with my general thoughts like I do in my episode-to-episode reviews. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of specific moments, but again, very in spoiler-free fashion. Just kind of like, hey, I liked this thing. Not going to say why or even necessarily what the thing was. Promise, you're not going to get spoiled watching this video. So let's start off with the story. It's pretty basic. The crew is transitioning from the beef restaurant to the Bear, and there's a lot to do and not enough money to do it with. And they need to borrow money from Uncle Jimmy, but it's high stakes. If they don't pay him back in 18 months, Carmi agrees to let Jimmy have the restaurant and the lot that it sits on. And that might sound like, oh, it's not a big deal. But I think collectively they ended up borrowing, I think it started off at about $800,000 from Uncle Jimmy, $300,000 that technically Mikey owed them, plus they asked for an additional $500,000, and I think the costs continue to accumulate as the season goes on. But we'll just sit with the $800,000. The lot, they say, is worth $2 million. So like giving up the lot in the restaurant is already like it's a win-win for Jimmy. If the restaurant works, he's a partner. He's gonna make money off of a successful restaurant. If it doesn't work, he invested $800,000 and he's getting back $2 million. So either way, it works for him. And then you throw in the fact that these characters on this show, they have a lot of their self-worth and their value tied into the success of not just the restaurant, but really anything that they do. Carmi and Sydney in particular. And there's a whole lot riding on the success of the new restaurant. And the odds are against them. The show introduces the pandemic as an antagonist of sorts. It's the reason that restaurants can't stay open anymore, and then they're trying to open a new one. So you're opening a new restaurant in a landscape where established, well-respected restaurants can't even stay open. So their backs are against the wall, and their chances of success are infinitesimal. But I want to start by talking about. Well, I can only say start. I'm like 9 minutes into. I can't say start. I want to continue by now talking about the first thing that I thought made the first season great, which was the characters, their stories, their personalities, watching them learn from and interact with one another. It was one of the best aspects of the show, and it's present again this season. Like I said a moment ago, the importance of opening the Bear and have the restaurant and have it be successful weighs on all of these characters. It's like an ever-present, invisible antagonist, but they each have their own shit going on as well. Richie still has doubts about his self-worth and usefulness, and while I wish we got a little bit more Richie this season, he had a really great arc this season that I thought ended really well for him. Like if we never got another season of the show, I'm very satisfied with the arc for Richie's character from the episode, season 1, episode 1 to season 2, episode 10. It's a great arc for Richie. If we don't see any more, it's a very satisfactory arc for him. Really good stuff. Marcus continues to be the character that resonates with me the most. He just cares so much, and he works so hard. He's so passionate. You can't help but want him to win. And he's humble. It's not just like, oh, I'm so great, I'm gonna make the best fucking donuts in the world. It's like he's humble. He wants to be great. He has big dreams, and I don't know. He's just a likable fucking guy. He has an entire episode dedicated to him this season, and it's one of my 3 probably favorite episodes of the season. It's the 4th one, I believe. And nothing particularly wild and crazy happens in it either. It's not like, oh, I love it because there's this moment that's just so intense or it's just heartbreaking or whatever. Nothing like that happens. It's just some really good moments in conversation that are carried by 2 great actors, simply being great actors. One of those 2 is obviously the guy who plays Marcus. Sorry, guy who plays Marcus, if you're watching this, I humbly apologize for not looking up your name beforehand. And I even more so humbly apologize for not watching 2 seasons of this show and not knowing your name. When you're one of my favorite characters, I'm a complete asshole. And then the other person is one of the many big guest stars that we see this season. I'll talk about that later as well. I wavered on whether or not I wanted to run off the names of the guest stars, but I feel like that's spoilery. I feel like part of the enjoyment is being able to do the DiCaprio meme at your TV when you see somebody you recognize, and they really start rolling them out in the back half of the season. But Marcus has a thing going on with his mom this season that I feel like the show didn't give enough time and attention to, and then I feel like they wrapped it up very vaguely and ambiguously. Like, you could easily miss it, and I think it's even, like I said, it's ambiguous. Like, you could question whether or not this is the wrapping up of that storyline. I think it is, but I just feel like they didn't give that aspect of Marcus's storyline enough attention. It's like they said, like, we're gonna give him episode 4, and that's kind of it. And I kind of wish they had spent a little bit more time on what Marcus had going on in his personal life. It's one of the problems that I think this season had. They introduced plot lines this season that were interesting to me, but then they didn't really spend any time on it or do anything with it. So, like, the thing with Marcus and what he had going on is one of those things. They also set up like how when I'm in videos, I'll be like, this was the A plot, and this was the B plot. They set up like a G plot with Ibra and Tina going to culinary school, and Ibra's not into it. And they completely forget about that plot line altogether until they lazily wrap it up in like episode 8 or 9. And when I say they lazily wrap it up, I'm not just throwing the word lazy around. It was lazy. Like, I mean, like, I honestly don't even understand why they introduced that plot line if they were gonna put so little effort into it. Like, they did fuck all with that. Like, literally, I do not know why. Like, they just wanted to give the actor that plays Ibra, like, hey, you're in the main cast, we want you to be in the show, so here, we're gonna write 1 page for your character, and we'll split it into 2 episodes, and that will be your character's arc. Like, it's bad. Like, and the arc's not bad, but, like, it's bad how little time and effort they gave this. It was so little that it really is like, why'd you even include this? Like, just let the character not be on the show. If that's all you're gonna do, let him not be on the fucking show. Sydney is continuing to struggle with the pressure of having failed in the past, which we learned about in season 1. and now having such a repeat of that situation, and an important opening in front of her with such high stakes and unfortunately high probability of failure. This she also has to contend with doubts about her ability to trust and rely on Carmy. And lastly, Carmy himself, he's continuing to give reasons to question his reliability. And he's nowhere near the train wreck that he was last season, which, again, when we talk about the intensity, Carmy not being as big of a train wreck drops that intensity quite a bit. But at the same time, it's like he's a character who's meant to be a real fucking guy. And people change and they evolve, and sometimes they're really tragic and fucked up, and then sometimes things happen and they get better. That's just what it is. And if you want to have a realistic arc for Carmy, he can't be dealing with the exact same shit and responding to it the exact same way for the entirety of the show's run. But I mean, having him not be mad as fuck all the time and just crazy, it takes that tension out a little bit. But I think I'm ready to move. Yeah, I'm ready to move on. There's one other thing about Carmy that they do this season that's different. And I'm going to save talking about it in depth for my thoughts, but they introduced a love interest for him in this season. And that's going to, that played into his inability to focus. So when I talk about Sydney's questioning her ability to trust and rely on Carmy, a lot of that comes from him now having his responsibilities on one hand, and a woman who is kind of like the embodiment of finding something for yourself in life, some sort of joy and happiness for yourself in life, whereas he just feels like doing the restaurant shit is like, it's so stressful, and it's I don't think that Carmy ever really got into it because he loved it. It was more of a thing like it was for Mike, it was for all these other things. But again, we can get into that at another time. I'm sure maybe I even talked about it in my season 1 video. But they introduced this love interest for Carmy, and like I said, that plays into Sydney's questioning of her ability to trust him. But now let's talk about the thing that was ever present in season 1 and all but absent in season 2, which I just alluded to a moment ago, which is intensity. Season 1 had its foot on the gas from start to finish. And I know some people cited that as the reason they couldn't even really watch it. Like, it was just too intense. For me, that, like I said, this is one of the 2 things that made the season great. It was part of the experience. And I could sit and watch a show and absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Very, very, very rarely do I get to experience it. And the intensity in season 1 made for an experience, and it made that show just kind of like leap off the screen. Or not even, no, it didn't make it leap off the screen. It pulled you in. It made you feel like you were in these tight spaces, in this tight kitchen with this high pressure and these people who are all like 2 seconds away from completely losing their shit. Like, you felt like you were in it. And a lot, if not all of that, was due to that confined space in that kitchen. All the spaces were so small and compact, and everyone was always on 10. It just felt like a high probability of something going wrong. And then whenever that happened, it'd be a huge fucking deal. And it was. Like, you remember that scene where the fucking, the ticket orders were flowing in and shit and they couldn't keep up? That was intense. Everyone was on edge. But this season, it's a lot more open. Like, lots of big, wide, establishing shots of Chicago. The restaurant is obviously bigger now. There's an entire episode 6, that takes place in a house with space. It's got a lot of people in it, but it's still a house. Another episode takes place entirely in Denmark, for the most part. And gone is the now constant feeling of anxiety and tension. And it's replaced with, it's still there, just in handfuls of moments throughout the season. So you might be like, okay, this, there was a moment in episode 3, and then there was a moment in episode 6, and there was a moment in episode 9. And it's like, you could point out those moments that were like, oh, these are moments that were intense. But season 1 was just a whole season of just anxiety. And like, I don't know, man, like that was part of it to me. Like, that, again, it was the fact that I felt like I was involved. Like, it was an experience for me. I was there, like, not there, but like I was feeling a lot of that tension even though I wasn't there. And that made it not just a I'm watching this and experience. It made it like something that I was experiencing. And that is a unique feeling to have when watching a show or a movie. And when you strip that away and replace it with like moments, it's still great, but it's like, fuck, like I was looking forward to that feeling again. And like the feeling is not, again, not, it's all but absent. It's not absent. It comes and goes, but man, I loved having it there the whole time. Instead, we get a slow build this season, and I mean a slow build, baby. I read somewhere that critics were asked not to discuss anything beyond episode 4, and I understand that because precious little happens in those first 4 episodes. Like the episode with Marcus that I mentioned earlier is the 4th one, but those first 3 were kind of like, they were mainly just setup, setting up the stakes with the opening of the new restaurant, like again, what I explained with Uncle Jimmy, the cost, all the things that they need to do, like we have to do this, we have to do this, setting deadlines, we have to get it done by this time, we have to open by this, like that's the, like all of that is the first 3 episodes. Like, does that sound interesting to you guys? Like, and I'm not saying these weren't interesting episodes, but I'm making a point that it's all of this kind of like establishing the new storylines and the new situations, the new settings, the new stakes, and they use these first 3 episodes to establish these things, and it's interesting. But again, like, you can't help but think about season 1 when you're watching and be like, man, season 1, I had already shit myself 8 times by episode 4, and now I'm just sitting here just like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what's going on here, yeah, okay, rather than experiencing it like I loved in season 1. I just felt like with a second season and already established characters, you don't need to introduce, and they didn't introduce any new main characters either, that they could kind of just dive right in. And I understand that, you know, you need to set these new stakes, but I don't know, I felt like they dragged out those first few episodes quite a bit. That's why I feel like it's smart, actually, to release this show all at once. Like, this is a binge show for sure. This is story spread out across 10 episodes, 2 more episodes, by the way, than season 1, which I did not expect. And like I said, you spend the first 4 or 5 setting shit up. If I had to come on here and do a video for each episode, like, those first few would probably have been really tough to do, and they probably would have been really short because, like I said, not a lot happened. It's just like, oh, we have to pass this test by this date. We have to open by this date to make sure that we can build profit for that. Like, it's like sitting in a long-ass business meeting and shit. So, just to kind of wrap up, the absence of constant tension, anxiety, and intensity, for me, lessened this season compared to the first one. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad season. I'm not even saying it's a good season. It's a great season still. It's just that when you're comparing it to perfection, if you lose something, you're no longer perfect. So you are now therefore logically less than the thing that was perfect. So that's all I'm saying. You got the perfect thing season 1. You strip away that anxiety and that tension that really for me was like 50-50 with the quality of the characters and the storytelling and all that. You strip that away and replace it with moments, you're just gonna have a lesser thing. But yeah, that's my thought. Like, this might improve season 2 for some people. A lot of people probably didn't like that feeling in season 1. They want to be able to sit there and kind of like passively watch and not be on the cusp of a heart attack. I wanted to be on the cusp of a heart attack. I seek out that kind of shit. So it worked for me. But a couple of things real quick before I wrap up. I want to close out with, like I said, my thoughts, and then we'll talk about them in a couple of moments. Guest stars. Episode 6 packs them in, but there's more. Another reason that I think they didn't want critics to talk about episodes 5 through 10, I feel like that's where they put all the guest stars at. Like, you get the one in episode 4 in the Marcus episode, just one person, but then there's like 8 that happen in episodes 5 through 10, like all kinds of different people. And like I said, I'm not going to bring them up, but it just goes to show you how much the talented people, the artists in Hollywood, how much they respect what season 1 of this show did. Because this felt like people were like, that was so good, I want to be involved in the second season. And they got big names. It's not like they just got regular fucking people. Some of them have been mentioned, publicly, but some others haven't, or they were surprises to me. So I mentioned earlier that they introduced a love interest for Carmy. Her name's Claire. I did not like this character. I think introducing the love interest is fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I generally don't like love interests, but it created an eternal conflict for Carmy between, like I said, his own personal joy and satisfaction and his responsibilities to the restaurant. So I fuck with that aspect of it. I just found the character to be unbelievably perfect. Like, she didn't even feel like a real person to me. Like, it was like someone typed, like, create perfect woman for Carmi into some fucking 3D printer AI app or some shit, and they printed out this woman. Like, I wanted her to feel like a real person with real problems and a real life, and not just someone who is there as a means for Carmi to learn a lesson. Like, hey, let's introduce this woman who's so perfect for him that she will inevitably distract him from his responsibilities. I'm like, can you introduce a real person that can distract him from his responsibilities and not somebody who feels like a fucking create a character love interest? Like, I did not like the Claire character at all. And there will likely be a season 3. They set up the continuation of some of these arcs in the finale. And Claire, if there is a season 3, Claire will be in it. And that'll suck unless they decide to make her slightly less than pure perfection. She was annoyingly perfect. Another thing has gone wrong it got kind of tired for me in the first few episodes. It was like every episode, now there's this new thing that went wrong. Now we got to fix this thing. And there's a thing with the fridge that kind of persists throughout the season. That was good, but like, it kind of got old. Like, okay, it's like I said in those first three episodes, like the slow building of all the things that they needed to work on with the restaurant and the money and the business stuff, all of that setup felt like it was dragged on a little bit long. Same thing with here, with I mean, this is part of it, but just the constant like, oh, now this thing's messed up. Now, like a few times it feels normal, but then it just kind of felt like, okay, is this gonna be like every episode a new thing's gonna go wrong? Like, I don't know. I felt like that went on a little bit too long. There's a scene with Tina singing that I thought was kind of weird. She's doing karaoke, and like just in a void, the scene is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with the scene, but the scene, it was going for something, and I couldn't really understand how they felt they could go for an emotional moment with this scene when Tina's just not really that important in this season at that point. Now, see, Tina becomes a bigger factor in the second half of the season. It's kind of like a veteran stepping into a greater role. I don't want to spoil too much of what Tina's involved in this season, but by this karaoke scene, not a lot had been done with Tina, and it just felt weird. I'm like, you're going for a moment, but I feel like you haven't really worked to earn whatever reaction you want to get out of me here. So I thought that was a weird kind of scene. And then my last thought before I get in a couple of moments, that my infamous donut scene from season 1 with Marcus and Carmi is referenced in this season in the finale. And I don't know why, but that just felt nice to me. Like, it felt like the show was talking to me. Like, we know this hurts you, and we just want to let you know that we still feel this in our hearts, and that Marcus still acknowledges that this was a thing. I said it's referenced by Marcus. And then closing out with a couple of moments. Marcus has a great conversation with the guest actor in episode 4, which I believe I mentioned that earlier. I thought that was a really captivating scene. I thought that was a great episode. That was one of my favorite episodes of the season. It's just him and this character just having a conversation. But I don't know, man. It was just really good to me. I can't even really pinpoint why. I'm sure if I thought about it and watched it again, I would. But I watched it the one time, and here I am. Here I am for you guys. Episode 6 was, I think, a true bottle episode. That term is used a lot, often incorrectly, maybe even incorrectly by me right now. But I mean, I believe this fits the definition of a bottle episode. The entire episode is a flashback, so it's not in any way tied into present day. Of course, it's tied in thematically. The purpose of the episode is to kind of showcase how Carmi is such a fucked up adult present day. Like, by showcasing how fucked up his family is. So it has that purpose, but like, it's a flashback. It doesn't tie in with anything present day, and it all takes place within this house, this one location. It sounds like a bottle episode to me. But it was a great episode, man. And one of the guest stars, this episode had like 5 or 6 big name guest stars in it. No bullshit. Not one, like 5 or 6. Where I'm just looking, like, there were ones that were like, you only see it for a split second. I'm like, is that so-and-so? Like, they barely even showed this motherfucker. But one of the guest stars in particular showed up and showed out. And I mean, I've seen this actress in 8 million movies, man. Like I said, big star. And I don't know if I've seen her better than she was on this show. That's how good she was in episode 6. And it was also interesting seeing another of the guest stars from this episode be unlikable, episode 6. Generally, whenever we see this actor in something, we like him. I wanted to throw a fork at him in this episode. And now if you've seen the episode, you now know who I'm talking about. Yeah, he was a complete fucking asshole, man. And what's interesting is, like, his most recognizable role, he was also an asshole, but he was a very, very likable asshole. This guy, you want to punch his fucking teeth in. Episode 7 was a Richie-focused episode. That was a great one, too. They rolled out another huge guest star in this one at the end. Richie has a great scene with her that's very similar to the one that Marcus has with the guest star of his episode. Like I said at the opening, Richie's arc, really good here. And I think this episode, the episode 7, well, there's no I think. This was the turning point for his character. And the way we see Richie after that episode, entirely different Richie. So really good stuff there. Episode 10 is the finale, obviously, and it also has the big kitchen scene, just like last season's finale. Finale is great, don't get me wrong, but again, the much more open kitchen and much more spacious kitchen and more polished crew, it sucked a lot of the tension out of that kitchen scene. And, you know, they still introduce issues. They still introduce blow-ups. There's no, it's not a whole one-shot or anything like that, but it's just not the same when everything else is normal outside of the issues and the blow-ups. Like I said, when I say normal, a big kitchen, like, you don't have to deal with the fact that a lot of people didn't know what they were doing in season 1. Like, Tina was stubborn and trying to, couldn't get over her ways of not doing things well. Sid was trying to establish herself in this environment. Richie didn't give a fuck. Carmi, like everyone had their issues here. In this season, everyone's now polished and seasoned, right? The kitchen's bigger. So it's like all of that tension is gone. They have to, again, just like they did for the entire season as a whole, they got to reintroduce tension in moments rather than having it like these long, prolonged episodes of tension. And again, it's just lesser. It's not bad. It's just less. Let's see, where was I? The issues and blow-ups, they hit hard on this show because they happen at fucked up times. Like in real life, right? Like things can go bad and then they can just get worse. And when the vibe is mellow and you introduce chaos, it can still work. It's just not as well when my previous experience with this show was introducing chaos when chaos was already present. Like when you introduce chaos on top of already established chaos, it makes the new chaos 10 times worse. This season introduced chaos when things were going like normal. So then you just got regular fucking chaos instead of supersized chaos. It's the best way I can explain the difference between the two seasons. Having said all that, though, I still enjoyed my time with this show and these characters like I did with season 1. This show still knows how to hit the emotional highs and lows. Those moments are still there. I really just have the one criticism. It was perfect like season 1, but it likely was. It wasn't perfect like season 1, but it likely was never going to be. And perfection is a really high mark to hit. But this show's still going to be in my top shows for this year. It was still a great watch for anyone who enjoyed the first season. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.